Hello my dear students, welcome to your Geography's online class. Today in this class, we will be discussing about the chapter Water Resources. In specific, the topic Traditional Method of Irrigation Practice in India. As in earlier chapter, we discussed about the various sources of water and also the irrigation practice in India and why it is so necessary. So today we will be discussing about the different types of irrigation that is practiced in India. So when we talk about irrigation, there are basically two different types as broadly categorized. One is considered to be the traditional method and the other is known to be as the modern method of irrigation practice. In India, the age-old agricultural practice has been serving the Indians with huge food demands, which now has been inappropriate because of lack of production. So in order to enhance these productivity, the irrigation is very much required because we see that rainfall is not sufficient. So this irrigation type here in this class today, we will be discussing about the primitive methods of irrigation practice with their advantages and disadvantages. So first off, the method of irrigation, the primitive method of irrigation to be discussed is well irrigation. Well is a common feature that we have seen even in our areas. It is just digging the soil out or the ground out to extract the underground water. Now, this well irrigation is very much prevalent in northern part of the country. Because of the soft soil, the digging becomes very easy, and also the water table or the level of underground water is high because of the presence of numerous rivers. Hence, the northern plains of India, or you can say the northern part of the country, is very much predominant in the practice of well irrigation. Well, this well irrigation has certain advantages and disadvantages. The advantages of well irrigation, you see, it's very simple and cheap to dig out. Where the Indian farmers are mostly poor, for them to afford for well irrigation becomes very easy as it does not cost high. The next is easy, like it is not under any of the organizations or a group. A well is an individual source of water where you can use it whenever you wish to. There is no such source where you have to make payments for utilization of water either for irrigation or domestic purpose. The third, you see, the well water is an underground water which is extracted out. This underground water, when are mixed with various chemicals, this adds fertility to the soil when being provided to the soil in form of water. These soluble chemicals, they come out with the water, and when given out in the fields, they add up the fertility to the soil. While apart from these, they also have greater disadvantages. Disadvantages like well irrigation is limited to only smaller areas in irrigating the lands. It cannot be used to irrigate lands which are of 10 to 15 hectares. It is very limited to only 1 to 2 hectares of land. While the well, as the underground water recedes down, or when the level of underground water recedes or it decreases, then we find it most of the time during the drier season that the well dries up or the water available in well is very less, which cannot be extracted for the irrigation purpose. The next is, it is not very possible to carry out well irrigation in areas where the water is brackish. Brackish in the sense where the water contains high amount of salt. This leads to the infertility of the soil. Apart from these, there are also various other factors that has added to the advantages and disadvantages of well irrigation. For example, well irrigation, it does not bring lot of sediments, just like that of canals. When flows, they bring lot of sediments which are deposited in the agricultural field. But well irrigation does not do that. It's all free of that. But the greatest disadvantage for the well water becomes when the level of water decreases. With the decreasing level of water, it tends to dry up. And the next is, well irrigation requires a larger size of land. And that piece of land could have been used for some other agricultural purpose. But here is utilized for digging well. And then the areas nearby the well remains quite swampy, and hence various flies and mosquitoes happens to breed over this water, resulting in the spread of diseases. So these are certain disadvantages and advantages of well irrigation in India. The second form of primitive methods of irrigation practice in India is tank irrigation. If you say tank irrigation, it is one better method of storing water. So we see that the wastewater which goes uncultivated during the rainy season is very well stored in the tanks. Well, when we discuss about tanks, in India, peninsular India is more predominant in tank irrigation practice. Because in this region, or if you see in peninsular India, we find that those places are mostly covered by hard rocky surface, which does not allow the water or rainwater to seep inside the ground. And hence, South India becomes more prevalent in tank irrigation. The next stop is, now there are natural depressions which are formed in the plateau regions of India, that is South India, which acts as the natural tank for the storage of these water. Or else, tank irrigation is also practiced in other parts of the country, but there we have to construct a tank, a four-sided wall tank, so that water can be stored there. There are certain advantages and disadvantages of this tank. We see advantage as very similar to like that of well irrigation. It's very easy to construct and much cheaper as well, because it is affordable to every farmers in India. The next is, apart from just storing water, tank irrigation can also be, the water stored in the tank can also be utilized for the practice of pisciculture, that is fish rearing. So it gives income to both. It gives an income to the farmer. At the same time, also the water can be utilized for irrigation practice. But the disadvantage of this type of irrigation system in India is, we see, though it is cheaper, but the water when requires the most, that is mostly during the drier season, the early summer and the winter season when there is no rainfall, we see the waters in the tank very easily dries up due to evaporation. As the tank remains open on top, the mouth wide and open allows high rate of evaporation, resulting in the water drying up very easily. The next problem is, the water when stored in the tank leads to the siltation of the tank beds. That means at the bottom or the base of the tank, there is excess sediments which are deposited, and time and again the desiltation process has to be carried out, which is time consuming, at the same time cost effective. The next is, we see that it irrigates a very smaller area than as compared to the other modern forms of irrigation practice. Last but not least, we see the tank, it requires huge area to be constructed, and that very land which otherwise could have been utilized for agriculture has to be given out for the construction of tank. So these are the certain disadvantages that tank irrigation has. The last one to be discussed is the inundation canal of the primitive methods of irrigation. Inundation canal is mostly prevalent, or it is in work during the times of flooding situation, that is during the rainy season. The low-lying regions where canals are being constructed, naturally the earthen canals are constructed, their water fills up during the rainy season, and that water is utilized for irrigation practice. Whereas the water is much required during the drier season rather than the rainy season. So this is when we require the water during the dry season. The inundation canal remains to be dry, as because there is no flooded water that runs through this canal. Hence, it does not provide a large scope in carrying out irrigation practice with the help of inundation canal. So thank you class, this is for the day. We'll carry on with this again in the next chapter. Have a good day.